Hi, I'm Yolanda and this is Speak On. Today we're talking about drinking. We have dry January, we have sober October. We have such a drinking culture in this country that we can create entire months to abstain from alcohol in order to raise money for charity. Are we drinking because we want to, because we need to, because we're British, because we're bored? Do we just really like beer and wine that much? Growing up, when I went through phases of drinking, like lots and lots of teenagers do, on and off with my mates, then I went to uni, actually started drinking less and less until I was basically sober for years. And now I definitely still like wine. I'm not pretending I don't. I love a picante. They're great. But I definitely don't drink that huge amounts. One of the things I noticed, in preparation for this podcast, I started thinking, okay, what is my relationship with drink and alcohol? And I realised that the amount or frequency I drank really correlated to the types of people that I hung around with. On reflection, my drinking habits were definitely impacted by culture. I was raised by Jamaican and Italian parents. When I cast my mind back, my Black and Italian friends didn't really drink. So when I was with them, we'd have the odd drink maybe, but it was really about music and dancing and sports and cars and I don't know, other stuff we did when we were younger. But when I was with my English and my British white friends, we definitely drank a lot. Alongside doing those other things, we just multitasked differently, I think. Drinking feels like it's really ingrained in culture. So what happens when you give up altogether and decide to be sober? Today, I'm joined by Janey Lee Grace, a BBC radio presenter, a natural wellbeing expert. She's an author, she's a speaker, she's a PR, she's the host of an alcohol-free podcast, The Sober Club, An Alcohol-Free Life. She's awesome and she's really funny. So I'm really excited that she's here today. So welcome, Janey. How are you doing?
I'm really good, thank you. Thanks very much for inviting me. I'm so pleased you're talking about this. It's great.
Brilliant. And then how has this year been for you in terms of, lockdown and the fun and games that is 2020?
Yeah, it's been very interesting. On the one hand, I feel really blessed that I, do have my family around me, and I've got a home where I can get out into the garden and all of that stuff. And some of my work has continued, not all of it, but some of it has. So I feel really blessed and really grateful. But there's another part of me that it feels, it's really difficult to put it into words. I feel angry, actually. Yeah. I feel really fed up, really, really, really angry. Angry for so many people who have lost so much. I've got friends who've lost businesses. I can't see my mum. My elderly mum. So yeah, it's a very big topic. And I'm, as I say, on the one hand, I'm grateful. On the other hand, I'm really conscious of the unbelievable fallout from all of this, unbelievable fallout. And there's so many stories that I don't know if they'll ever get looked at. They'll probably never be looked at. But for everyone, we all know people who have been impacted, one way or another. So obviously I run the Sober Club at the community, and so I get to hear from a lot of people who are really suffering on all sorts of different levels, but the mental health impact is massive.
Oh yeah, we're going to be seeing the impact of that for years.
Absolutely,
as well. Absolutely, years. See, even just in the way that children interact with each other after not being at school for so long, I think it's going to be definitely an interesting one going forward. So actually, I'm glad that you brought up talking to people in your sober club in the community and about how it's impacted them, because as we know, through lockdown, drinking shot up,
really ramped up.
Oh my goodness. So what kind of things did you see, and were people that are kind of part of your sober community, did some of them think, okay, that's enough of being sober now, I'm going to have some drinks? What happened?
Well, it was a real mix, actually. What happened at the beginning was there were a bunch of people that I didn't actually get to find out about till later, when they, because one of the things, I'm sure we'll get into this, but one of the things that so often happens when people are drinking too much is that they get this sense of shame. I mean, I certainly had it when I stopped drinking, this absolute shame, but you can also get that shame if you stop again, if you've maybe stopped drinking, but then you start drinking again, rather. So I didn't find out till later. But I now know that there were lots of people who had a really good run of sobriety, and then lockdown just literally pushed them over the edge, and they just didn't feel they had the resources, and so they did start drinking again.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, to bring a happier note, I've had several people and several people I've been coaching actually, that through lockdown made the decision, okay, right now, I am not going to let this happen to me, and I'm absolutely going to do something about it. So they made their lockdown legacy one of sobriety.
Yeah.
So that's been amazing to see as well.
Because I do remember seeing memes around. There's kind of this thing of like, put out your bottles when everyone's clapping for the NHS and no one will know. So there were lots of jokes about it as well. But I can imagine it must have been also quite distressing for people too, if they've chosen that as their lifestyle, and then for it to be, I suppose, for them to feel challenged by it. I mean, I don't drink huge amounts, but I do know that I would think there was a part of me that was aware that I didn't want that to be the case during lockdown. So I was like, okay, if I buy a bottle of wine, I will only buy one at the weekend when I feel like it, and I cannot have anything like, say, Monday to Friday. And if I do, it'd be like, or Friday, sorry, it'd be Friday and Saturday. I wouldn't have anything like Sunday to Thursday. There'll be no drinking at all. That's kind of how I did that. Just thinking, not that I ever drank that much in the first place, but I think there was a part of me that was really aware. So it must be difficult for people that maybe don't have that awareness as well, and were maybe in less privileged situations than me, that would, I suppose, need that relief of a drink.
Well, what you've just described is what the term we now use is mindful drinker. You chose to be a mindful drinker. So some people can make that work, and they can have, as you say, they can choose to drink on a weekend or whatever, or they can have one glass, or they can, whatever their rules, in inverted commas, that they kind of set for themselves. And mindful drinking has become much more common, and something, a bit of a wellness trend actually, to be a mindful drinker. And of course now it's so much easier because there are alcohol-free drinks, really great versions of alcohol, of great grown-up drinks that are alcohol-free. So to be a mindful drinker works for some people. However, there are many people who think that they want to become mindful drinkers, and it absolutely doesn't work at all. I tried it year in, year out, for a week here, a month there, 2 months there. I did it for 9 months once, but it didn't work for the simple reason that I don't have an off switch. That actually it became, agony for me. And what actually happened was I started breaking my own rules. So if my rules were that I wouldn't drink in the week, I would then be saying to myself, oh yeah, but it's someone's birthday, so I'll just have one tonight. And then the following week, well, I know that I'm not drinking in the week, but we are going out for a meal, so I tell you what, that'll be okay. And before you know it, you're back up to every day. So I genuinely believe that some of us come without an off switch. And that was me. And there are many, many people like that. It can take a while to come to that realization. Okay, I don't have an off switch. When you do come to that realization, for those people in that position, if you like, it's incredibly freeing, because it's so much easier just to have none than to have the agony of, oh God, is it today? Oh no, it's not meant to be Thursdays or Tuesdays or the weekend, or what do I do on my birthday? It actually, the amount of people have said to me, oh God, life is so much easier just to choose not to have any. But just while we're on that topic, just for a moment, because I know there'll be a lot of people listening thinking, well, I'm good as a mindful drinker. And so there's just one top tip I would give anyone who is a mindful drinker, and that is, if that's working for you, and you're happy, having the days you've chosen or the amount you've chosen, whatever rules you've set for yourself, add on one really, really important rule. Okay, and that is, say to yourself, I will never, ever drink if I am upset or fearful or stressed. You might also want to add to that, I'll never drink when I'm really, really happy.
That's such a good point.
It will be very interesting, particularly the first one. Because the minute you allow yourself to drink when you're really stressed, really unhappy, really afraid, that's when it becomes that psychological link between, okay, alcohol is the relief that I need when I'm upset. And that's when you're back on that slippery slope, and it's a booze elevator, I call it, and it only goes one way. It doesn't go back up, it just goes down. And when people start drinking, when you're when you start off as a mindful drinker, all good. Then some stress pops up in your life, because let's face it, stress does. Something goes wrong, you get upset about something, very angry, very fearful, whatever it might be, and then you need, in inverted commas, a drink. It might happen to be a Saturday, and so you take your drink, and that's when the associations are made in the brain, very strong associations. Oh, that's what I do when I'm upset.
That's such a good tip. I hadn't even thought about that. I don't think I've ever really, I suppose it's not that mindful if I'm not even thinking about the emotion that I'm having when I am having a drink. Because obviously so many times it's social. Yeah, we both work in media. We've both in journalism and PR, which has a huge casual drinking culture. Every press event you go to, you walk in and people are just handing you champagne. Everything that you go to, people are sending you bottles of wine and spirits and things to review and try. So how easy or how hard was it to start to go on that sober journey, especially working in this sector?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It is the societal norm. And actually, the truth of it is, it's the same in pretty much any sector, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, the media is rife with free drinks and all the rest of it. But
there's so many
really,
parties. Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. But really, it's across everything. I've spoken to people in all different kind of, people who work in PR, teachers, doctors, medical profession. Drink is everywhere, because drink is everywhere in this country. It is like the glue that we think sticks everything together. We feel that we can't have a wedding or an engagement party or a funeral or a freshers week or a play date or a baby shower or a christening or anything without alcohol. It is so, the associations are so strong. But actually, the reality is it's just liquid. Yeah. If you're having a good time, you're having a good time, despite whatever it is you're drinking. And really, as with so much of this, it's just about changing your mindset. When you change your mindset, you just see it differently. It is difficult if you've got nothing else to drink. I mean, in the early weeks when I first stopped, and I was still having those cravings, in inverted commas. I mean, I now know that craving is just a thought. That's all it is. It's just a thought. And of course we have control of our thoughts. But in the early weeks, they're really strong when that thought in your head is saying, I deserve a drink. I'm at this party and there's all this free champagne and free wine and everybody else is having a great time. I deserve a drink. What about me? The kind of little inner toddler plays up and makes you feel really fed up that you can't have any. Yeah. But you have to spin that around in your head. And two things need to happen. One, you need to take responsibility for your own thoughts and choosing your thoughts. And two, you have to actually prep ahead. So I now don't go to an event without prepping ahead. I'll ring the venue and I'll give them a really hard time if they haven't got really good alcohol-free choices. Yeah. And amazingly, a lot still don't. It's actually very frustrating that with a lot of hospitality, they still haven't got it. They haven't got it yet. It's incredible the amount of events. I went to I was presenting a health awards after I'd only been sober a couple of months. And it was a health awards in a massive exhibition centre. And all that was on offer at this health awards was white wine, red wine and beer. There wasn't even water. When I asked for water, she said, I think there's a tap, down there. Are you kidding me?
That's insane.
You're actually kidding me? And then if you press it further, they'll sometimes say, there's orange juice for the non-drinkers. Do you know what? I'm not 12. I don't want Coke or a warm orange juice, thank you. I want a really lovely grown-up drink, just like you've got, but without the poison. Thank you very much. And there's no excuse now because the choice of alcohol-free drinks is massive. Yeah. You can get fantastic alcohol-free fizz, you can get kombuchas, you can, your artisan tonics and on and on and on. Yeah. And the truth of it is, particularly with the media, if any of those events, let's just imagine for a moment, you were inviting, Zoe Ball or Davina McCall or Elton John to your event, would you give them warm orange juice? Because they don't want the alcohol. Well, if you think of it like that, seriously, would you?
Well,
no,
you
of course you wouldn't.
I went to a celebrity party, this is a few years ago, and they genuinely had no soft drinks, and we had people who were sober and pregnant people there. And I had to, as the PR, I had to go and badger the venue. And I'd be like, where's your soft drinks? Like, we don't have any. And I was like, why have you only got alcohol? They just hadn't even thought about it.
No, they don't. Well, this is it. It is changing. The good news is it is starting to change. And there are now lots of pubs, clubs, restaurants that are now opening up, and they have a kind of mindful drinking menu. And they're starting to sell some of the artisan spirits. So it's starting to change, but certainly when you go to actual functions, there needs to be more work done. So I now take my own. If they don't have anything, I'll take my own, and if they want to charge me corkage, they can do that. But I now go with I just prep ahead now. In the early weeks, there is quite a lot of thinking ahead to do. As with any behaviour change, you have to prep.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would listen to your TED talk, which I loved. It was so funny. And you did make a point about the fact that younger generations are drinking less and less. And I work a lot with influencers and go to when the world is turning normally, there can be 3 to 6 events a day. And I think some of the older ones of us sometimes will be like, it gets the evening, maybe we would like a drink or want to try something, but on the whole it's actually just mainly non-alcoholic. It's mainly mocktails and other drinks, and then the alcohol's kind of right at the back. So I've seen that real shift in kind of generational happening in front of my eyes, where they're like, no, I don't want anything to drink. No, I don't drink. So many of them are just completely sober, or they just really, it's just every now and again, maybe like a birthday, a party here and there, but on the whole, just, it's amazing.
I mean, won't it be great if you can imagine some point in the future, because we could never have imagined even 15 years ago that the way the tide would turn on cigarettes, right, on smoking. We could never have imagined it, could we? But wouldn't it be amazing if in years to come it became as normal to choose not to drink as it is to choose to drink?
Yeah.
Because it's that thing of feeling that it's worrying about what other people say is so massive for people in the early days. They get really worried. Well, what will happen? Will my friends just not want to be my friends anymore? How will I feel left out? Will everyone think I'm boring? Actually, the reality is, when you've gotten over the first couple of times, you realise people don't really care. As long as they've got their drink, they actually don't care. But won't it be great when it becomes as normal not to drink? I hope it happens.
Yeah, I think, I genuinely think it will, especially because Gen Z are way healthier as well, and they're so much more mindful of what they're consuming. But I have a question. So when you started being sober, essentially, and kind of going down in being on that journey, I should say, what did you think of nights out? So the reason I asked this is when I was at university, I actually stopped. I drank less and less and less until the point where I think it was, I want to say it's maybe about 3 to 4 years. I just didn't really drink anything. And I maybe had 2 of those years where I was completely teetotal. And it wasn't a choice. It just happened. And none of my friends drank or anything. It was just normal. But then when I did go out with other people, I would get really bored because they were drinking, then just go home. Because I was like, that's it, I've had enough of this night now. I'm going to go somewhere else and I'll find something else fun to do. How were your nights out and kind of like social interactions after?
Well, it is an interesting question, and the truth of it is your boredom threshold definitely gets less.
Yeah.
And I always advise people that when they are, going out into social situations where they know that they'll be drinking, people will be drinking alcohol, and there's a lot of alcohol going to be involved. I usually tell them to prep ahead, so they've got their taxi booked, or they've already arranged to leave early. Give whoever's party you're going to, give them a heads up. You can fib if you need to, and just say, listen, I'm going to need to leave early, because the chances are you'll be absolutely fed up. Once people start, repeating what they've already told you, it's time to go.
Yeah.
Actually, the truth, this anagram, sober equals bores, could not be further from the truth. Actually, it's drunk people that are really boring.
They
when
really
say
are.
the same old crap over and over again, it's hideous. And you start to notice it, and it's exhausting. And so the kindest thing for everyone is just to make your exit early. Plan something great for yourself early the next morning, because they'll all be in bed feeling like hell and you'll be up doing what you need to do. So you do have to adapt your social occasions, and actually, unfortunately, some people find that some of their friendship groups change, because if your relationship is built only on drinking, I mean, I look back and I can see that there were some people that I spent time with really only because we could kind of drink each other under the table. We have absolutely nothing in common. It's really tough because you have to actually kind of, gently detox those people from your life because they're not good for you.
Yeah, that does make perfect sense, and that's something I definitely saw. Only like not that much, luckily, but there were a few people I'm like, they just drink a lot, and I'm a little bit bored of this situation now. On your TED talk, you talk about, I suppose, how normalized a drug alcohol is, which is so interesting because we just aren't like programmed to think of it as one. It's like, as a person that doesn't take any drugs, and I've never taken any because my mum very much brought me up with saying, look, if you need something to make you have a good time, then you just shouldn't be doing that thing because there are things that you enjoy, just go and do them. But she's very much like, she doesn't really drink that much herself at all. She's like, maybe once every 6 months my mum will have a little drink and it goes straight to her head and it's very funny. But we aren't taught to think that way about alcohol. Should we be?
Well, absolutely, but I mean, we've all been brainwashed into thinking that we need alcohol, and that that great expression, alcohol is the only drug we have to justify not taking. And which is just incredible, but it's absolutely true. And it took me a long while before I really realised that alcohol is a drug. I used to say exactly the same as you. I used to say I've never taken drugs. I've never smoked. I've never taken drugs, despite being in the music industry. I always used to say I've never taken drugs, but I most certainly have. And I've taken the most harmful drug there is, because when you actually bring into the equation everything, not just harm to the individual, but harm to the economy, to other people, to society, alcohol comes out as the number one most harmful drug. So it is a drug, but we've sugarcoated it. We've made it legal. We've made it practically compulsory is what we've done. But I don't know how that's going to change. I mean, I don't know. I'm not up for prohibition. I'm not saying no one should ever drink. But it would be great if more people were aware of the fact that we have been brainwashed. And particularly when I see this nonsense about alcohol being good for you. Absolute tosh. Alcohol is not good for you. You know, it just is not on any level. I used to love those articles and I used to read them, red wine is good for the heart. No, it isn't. Have a grape. Have a grape. Have some veg. You don't need toxic poison.
Exactly. Go for a run. Do any of those things.
Exactly. So, you're right. We really have all been brainwashed into this stuff.
So what does it really mean to be sober? And also, like, how did you get to this journey? How did you make the decision to be sober? And how long have you been sober for?
Yeah, well, even the word sober is a tough one. And at the beginning, I didn't actually like the word. I didn't really like using it because it has so many connotations. It really does. Sometimes you hear the word sober and we think that the opposite of that is rock bottom addict, which I never was. I didn't ever have a rock bottom moment. We now know that the term is grey area drinkers. That's what a large number of people are in the UK. There are some people who are absolutely at rock bottom, and the path is clearer for those people, because if you're really at rock bottom and you're clinically dependent on drugs and alcohol, then there are services that can help you. But for those of us who are were grey area drinkers, that's seen as the norm. But actually, we're somewhere on that booze elevator. We aren't right at the very bottom. We aren't at rock bottom, but we're also not right at the top and completely okay. We're somewhere in between, but we're only going downhill, And so anyways, to answer your question, I knew that something had to be changed. If you'd said to me, do you want to be sober? I'd have said, well, I don't know what you even mean. No, that sounds really boring and I'm not an addict. So why would I need to be sober? So I never used that expression ever. But I did know that something had to change, because I was waking up at 3 a.m, hating myself. I was massively overweight and bloated and really anxious, although I didn't even realise at the time. I knew that something had to change. I just knew. And then I was given a copy of the Sober Diaries, Claire Pooley's book. And because it was so relatable, it was she was a mum and she was dealing with her kids and her career and all the rest of it. And she went through this process of ditching the booze. And I read the book because I was going to be interviewing her on the radio. So I kind of had to read the book.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, there's a sign. So I just decided, okay, well, if Claire can do it, I'll do it just for dry January. I'll just see how I get on. So it happened to be dry January. That was the end of 2017. So I read the book over Christmas. We were going to be interviewing Claire on something like the 4th of Jan. And I thought, well, the least I can do is stop for January, and I'll tell Claire that I'm doing that. So I stopped on the 31st, on New Year's Eve, actually. I decided not to go out with a bang. Actually didn't drink on that New Year's Eve, and then never looked back. And when people ask me what was different that time, because obviously I'd stopped lots of times before, but what was different was that I was able to push through the kind of hard bit, if you like, because it can be a little bit tough at first.
Yeah.
But the reason I was able to push through is because I caught sight, and I've used that expression, I've really thought about that expression. I caught sight of a better life without the booze. And that's what kept me going. I didn't find that better life instantly within the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Felt a bit crap, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But I'd caught sight of a better life, and I just kept thinking, well, I've heard people talk about this, and I'm going to wait for this to kick in. I'm going to see what happens. And I stuck with it. But I also put some of the work in, and that's what I do with the Sober Club. I try and encourage people that this is not as simple as stopping drinking. Yes, of course, that's the important bit, and that underpins everything. But then on top of that, you've got to make sure you look after your health and well-being. You've got to eat right, and you've got to kind of check what's going on in your head if you want to stay sober. I mean, I use that phrase again, as I say, it's a difficult one, because then I don't know how much you want to go into this, but ditching the booze, being alcohol free, doesn't necessarily mean that you have what we then call emotional sobriety. Yeah. That comes later. Because actually the truth of it is, if you've been drinking since you're a teenager, you've had a hell of a lot of years where everything that's happened in your life has been through the lens of alcohol. All the big events. Yeah. Every emotion that you've had to deal with, whether it's, I don't know, sadness, happiness, falling in love, your first experience of sex, everything has probably been through the lens of being drunk.
Absolutely. Gosh, that's such a good point. It's so many years for a lot of people are invested in drinking, aren't they? And
alcohol is often your longest relationship, your longest meaningful relationship. Yeah. So you've got to kind of unravel all this. There's often quite a lot of layers. Yeah, to it. And I love what you were saying at the top of that. We're about using the word sober. So my ex was a recovering drug addict, and so therefore teetotal for the years we were together. So but he'd quit before we got together, and so he was teetotal. So it was really interesting to live with someone who was sober for the reasons that you attach to sobriety. I haven't met very many people outside of religion who are sober. And just say, that's it, I don't drink anything. Only like my friends are kind of, the influencers I work with, and I would say my friends in the fitness industry, but like anyone else outside of those reasons, it's not very common. So since talking about it more publicly and having your podcast, have you started to discover more people you realize are sober, or is it that you are kind of slowly converting people into a life of sobriety? Well, I don't think it's down to me. I mean, I think that the trend is huge. I mean, it's absolutely huge now. And I know exactly what you mean. There's a very distinct difference between people who would call themselves sober because they, in inverted commas, have to be. Yeah. They have to be teetotal because they're following some recovery program, or they have to stay teetotal because they've been told in, I don't know, whatever it is, or because they're on some kind of medication, or because their religion tells them. I mean, that's a world apart from the world that I'm trying to kind of encourage, which is any and all of us have a choice. Yeah. It's a choice to be well. And just like I choose, not to eat really crap food, I choose not to poison myself with alcohol. It's really that simple, actually. Yeah. It's just we don't think we've got a choice. That's what's so bizarre. Yeah. Because alcohol is so ingrained, we don't think we've got a choice. And many of those people that you were talking about who in inverted commas, have to be sober, if you ask them whether that's their choice, they say, no, I wish I could drink.
Yeah.
Why? No, why? That's the bit I want to question. You know, and that's why, you know, you said you watched my TED Talk. You know, my opening question on that was not to ask yourself, am I drinking too much? You know, because that's how long is a piece of string.
Yeah.
Instead of that, ask yourself, could my life be better physically and emotionally without alcohol?
Yeah.
And at the beginning, you might think, I can't see how that can ever be. That's when you just have to trust people like me who tell you 100% it will be better. On every level, there isn't anything that ditching the booze doesn't help with. Of course it doesn't cure everything. It's, you know, it's not a completely magic pill, but there isn't anything that it doesn't improve.
Yeah, like you were saying, sober hair, your skin.
Sober hair.
Yeah, and even I suppose think about even when
eyesight. Your eyesight gets better.
Does it?
How about that?
Your eyesight?
Yeah. So cool. That's cool.
Pretty cool.
Eyesight gets better. Yeah. I mean, I'm not 100%,
but any change is a change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, so you've got physical changes, and there are many. I mean, I get to read this stuff every day in my community in the Sober Club. Someone will pop up and there'll be another amazing thing. You know, who knew? You know, I'm not using my inhaler anymore because, you know, who knew? I'm not on HRT anymore. Who knew? There's all this stuff that comes up in terms of physical issues. But then when you get onto the mental health and well-being, wow. Yeah. I mean, the difference is incredible. And again, you know, I'm not being daft enough to say that stop drinking and all mental health issues will go. Of course they won't. But it's 100% certain that alcohol exacerbates any mental health issues you've got going on. Absolutely 100%.
Yeah.
So, you know, quit that, and then you can look at stuff. You can look at stuff with fresh eyes. You can start from a place of the real you. Yeah. And that's just the kind of the physical and the emotional. And then on top of that, you've got all the great stuff like, okay, what do I want for my life? The amount of people I've seen who have just blossomed and started new careers or written a book or decided to travel, not at the moment. But, you know, it's incredible, this sense of, joy is the only word I can use. I never thought I'd hear myself use the word joy. if you'd said to me the word joy 3.5 years ago, I'd say, well, that's you might feel that in church if that's how you are, but joy, I don't know what you mean by the word joy, but I can't think of another one now, because that's what it is. It's a kind of a contentedness with life that you don't get when you're drinking.
Yeah, and it makes sense. You know, you talked about there's so many different changes: the physical, the emotional, mental health, and also financial too.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
mind you, I do often say we tend to redistribute the money we save. Someone in the Sober Club the other day said, I can't believe it, I've saved £2,000, because there are these little apps that show you, you know, that kind of count the days for you, and then they show you how much you've saved, and it's super exciting. And in fact, I often say to people, one of the great tips if you're stopping is get a glass jar or a vase and pop it on your desk and actually put cash in there. I mean, God knows we can't do anything else with cash right now. So put the cash that you know you would have spent, even go and draw it out, be really honest and say, look, I know I would have had a couple of drinks, okay, I'm going to put a tenner in my jar, because it's so amazing to watch that money mount up. And that's money that you would literally have just drunk away, right? And you watch it in that lovely little pot, you know, vase in front of you. It's amazing. But what I was saying was we kind of redistribute the money, because then of course we spend it on stuff that is actually good for us, you know, actual self-care rather than poison. Yeah,
and I love that you're saying it's actual self-care, and I think that kind of taking that step to having this kind of alcohol-free life is a serious act of self-care. It's a real commitment to self-care as well, which a lot of people aren't necessarily comfortable with, because they're not necessarily used to looking after themselves and prioritizing themselves, because some people see self-care as selfish, and it's essential, isn't it?
It's absolutely essential. Yeah, it's and you're right. You know, when I was drinking, I although I used to talk about self-care and you know do interviews and talk about meditation and self-love and self-care and all the rest of it. If you'd have asked me whether I felt it was true for me, I'd have said, no, of course not. I'm not even deserving of that. And that's because what alcohol does is steals your joy. It actually steals your joy. It makes you not want to take care of yourself because you don't feel like you're worth it. And when you've ditched the booze and you can start to just take small steps to actually appreciating small things, And putting and self-care doesn't have to mean taking yourself off to a spa. It can be tiny things. It can be putting your woolly socks on and having some I don't know, chocolate drink. It can be little things. Buy yourself a really nice notebook.
Yeah.
I always recommend that, because actually writing your thoughts down in the early weeks can be hugely helpful. It's just starting to appreciate yourself is super important. So yeah, it's really critical. Self-care is it's such a it's a word that just gets chucked around, and it kind of doesn't mean very much. But actually it does. It means everything, actually. It's about being kind to yourself. Most of us wouldn't think twice about being kind to someone else. If you saw someone else, a friend or a relative, who was going through some stress or, anxiety, or they weren't feeling well, you would be thinking to yourself, well, what can I do? Even if it's taking them a cup of tea, or buying them a little gift, or cooking them a meal, or baking them a cake, or whatever. What could I do? Is a lot of people's first thought for someone they love.
Yeah.
But we don't do that for ourselves.
So true. We really don't, do we? So you have a book coming out in February, because you've said, you could get sober and you can write a book. Is this what happened? You were like, well, now I've got this. Now my mind is so clear. I'm going to write a book.
Yeah. Well, I've written books in the past on holistic living. So I have written some books, but I wasn't sure whether I was going to write a book on all of this stuff, because it kind of felt like I was doing a lot with the podcast and running the Sober Club. And then I just thought, well, why not? I'll write a book, because there's stuff that I want to share that isn't necessarily out there in quite that form. There's loads of books about ditching the booze, which is fantastic, and there's lots of memoirs. But I really wanted to focus on the health and wellbeing aspects.
Yeah.
So the book's called Happy, Healthy, Sober, Ditch the Booze and Live the Life You Want.
That's amazing.
So I'm really proud of it. It's going to be great, because what I've been able to do is talk people through the first sort of 7 days and the first 30 days. So there's real solid tips there for actually ditching the booze. But then actually you could buy the book if you've been sober for a year, because part 2 is just about everything to do with holistic health and well-being. And I've brought in some great experts as well. So it's not just me. And we really do cover the whole picture, all kinds of aspects of mindset and great nutrition and meditation and NLP techniques and how to sleep well, everything really. So I really hope it will be a kind of a book that will inspire people as to, it's the what's next, you know. A lot of people can ditch the booze for dry January or whatever. Yeah. But what's next?
So your book is out in February. Have you got a date for it yet? Or
yeah, I think it's out February the 11th, I think it is. There might be an ebook in January.
Oh, brilliant. Well, so just in time for kind of the end of dry January.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
If you start dry January and you're like, actually, I can carry this on, because I know a few friends, they get through dry January and they're like, that was easier than I thought. I should continue to push myself.
Yeah. So you should pre-order the book now, and then by the time you get to the end of dry January, you'll have the inspiration.
Exactly, you're ready. You can just keep going with it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with these months, I'm really in two minds about them, because I love the fact that, Sober October and dry January and dry July, if you're in the States, flag up, ditching the booze. And it makes it, of course, much easier if you're in social situations, because you don't have to kind of answer any questions, because it's just kind of what a lot of people are doing. So I love that aspect of it. But I really dislike the fact that if people decide to do this just for that month, if they've really made their commitment, okay, I'm only doing it for this month in order to raise money or whatever, that's kind of disastrous, because you're just white knuckling it through the month till you get to the end of the month, and then you drink again, probably more than you did before. Yeah,
people really go for it on February the 1st, don't they?
Yeah, and actually that's just so detrimental. And you've completely missed all of the benefits. Most of the benefits won't have kicked in. In those first 4 weeks. A few will, but most won't. Certainly not if you haven't been focusing on them. If you haven't had the right mindset. If your mindset is simply, I'm struggling through this awful time. I really want to drink, but I can't. Only a few more days. Only a couple of weeks. You're telling your unconscious mind, you need alcohol. Alcohol is what you really want. Yeah. So come February the 1st, you're back where you started. Well, in fact, worse actually.
Yeah, of course. So now, obviously, we've just had, we're kind of at the, we've had Sober October, we've kind of gone through the year. This year's been quite stressful. People have been drinking more. Have you had people reach out to you to say, okay, I have addressed that this year I've drank maybe more than usual because of the stresses. I want to make that step to become mindful drinker and then go over to life of sobriety. Have you had like an increase in people talking to you about that?
Yeah, massively. Yeah, lots of people feel that way, and it's great that they've noticed. It's all about the noticing, isn't it? Being conscious, and once you're conscious, you can do something about it. So yeah, there's been a lot of people have reached out to me. A lot of people have started listening to the podcast and Sober Club. People have joined the Sober Club. I mean, again, back on that thing we were talking about at the beginning with the kind of mindful drinking thing. Again, what I'd really, really recommend is if you know you've been drinking too much over the last few months or whatever, and something is saying to you, oh, I need to make a change here. I want to drink mindfully or whatever. Then I would say set yourself the challenge of doing 30 days alcohol free. Preferably 100 days, but at least 30 days alcohol free, because that's not going to do you any harm. Now, as I've already said, do those 30 days with a different mindset to the way you would do a dry January challenge. Just set yourself that challenge. Doesn't matter when you start. Forget about, January the 1st. Doesn't matter. Start tomorrow. Start when you've made your decision. But get yourself prepped. Don't just launch into it. Get yourself prepped. This is what I talk about in the Sober Club. I've got various trainings and online courses, and I always talk about having a toolbox. So get your little sober toolkit ready. Because as with anything, you're far more likely to succeed if you've actually thought ahead and prepped what you're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what do you think the future looks like? Do you think more and more people are going to take up sobriety? And do you think, you'll know this more than me about people coming up with good alcohol alternative drinks. Do you think the drinks industry are investing more money in that, or do you see that happening?
Yeah, that's one of the things that's been most incredible in the last sort of 3 to 5 years. The difference in the availability of fantastic alcohol-free drinks is just incredible. It's absolutely incredible, and all of the big brewers are onto it now. All of them, And in fact, I read somewhere that some of the big brewing companies, your Heinekens and people like that, have had the biggest increase in their 0% products. So they're all onto it. They're not daft. You've got Adnams Brewery, you've got Guinness now. There are so many of them that recognise, okay, people want this. Quite rightly. People want it for all kinds of reasons. You say they're pregnant. It might be their religion. It might be they want to drive home. It might be that they've chosen this lifestyle. There are a million reasons why people would want a decent grown-up alcohol-free offering. And then in addition to the big guys, as it were, there's loads of amazing little artisan alcohol-free drinks brands, some beautiful companies who have really put love and care into their artisan botanicals, their tonics. There's fabulous kombuchas, the shrubs. You probably haven't even heard of this stuff. We did another whole podcast on drinks. There's so many great things. If you like cider, there's great alcohol-free cider. You can get this stuff online now. There's a couple of companies that sell all of them online. And the supermarkets are actually coming up to speed amazingly. Most of the supermarkets in the UK have now got a decent alcohol-free section. It's not bad.
I look forward to those days, because I genuinely love the flavour of the alcoholic drinks that I drink. And I would drink all of them if I had a really good non-alcoholic version. Okay,
well, tell me what you like, and I'll tell you the replacement.
Okay, like a really good non-alcoholic Malbec. I'd like a really good old fashioned, but I've tried some non-alcoholic whiskies and they've been a little bit
So have you tried, for the whiskies, have you tried Lyres? Lyres?
No, I haven't.
Oh, well, there you go. You see, you've got to try Lyres. Lyres have got 13 different flavours. And their idea is that whatever your drink is, they'll replace it. That they have a and here's a really cool thing about Lyres. I did a podcast with the founder, but the really cool thing, particularly about the Lyres equivalent to whiskey, and I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but they actually won in a drinks competition. They won on a taste test, and it wasn't an alcohol-free competition. It was a whiskey competition, and they won on a taste test. How incredible is that?
Okay, as soon as this is finished, I'm literally going to buy one.
Lyres.
Do they do tequila?
They equivalent? Do, again, I can't remember all of that. I haven't got it in front of me, but check it out, because they've got 13 amazing flavours, really amazing. And now on the Malbec's a little harder, because the red wine, I must admit, is one of the hardest things to really replicate with alcohol-free drinks. But what I'd suggest you try, two suggestions. One would be that you get really any old alcohol-free red, and you make mulled wine. Yeah. Right? Because mulled wine, particularly in the winter, is just so cool. Delicious, isn't it? And it tastes great as an alcohol-free. So make sure you've got some cinnamon in there, and, you know, all that a cinnamon stick and some nice herbs and spices and all of that. Yeah. I've got a recipe on my blog. Or if you do want to try the red wine, in inverted commas, then one of the best alternatives is called 9 Elms. Okay. 2 separate words, 9 Elms. It's not red wine. It's a kind of unusual, it's quite difficult to describe, a kind of slightly kind of warming spice kind of drink, but it's really cool. Okay, I've definitely made a note of them. Yeah. The truth of it is, right, here's my, sorry, to interrupt you. Let me get my phrase in that I use all the time. Okay. And that is, keep the ritual, change the ingredients. Yeah. Yeah. So you said to me, I really love my this. And I'm guessing that you attach an association to that. So in other words, if I were to come over and hand you some whiskey in a crappy paper cup, you know, with nothing with it, it'd be like, you're not desperate for that. Yeah. It'll be the associations, won't it? I'm sure you like it in a nice glass, for example, right? And so my message is, keep the ritual, change the ingredients. Yes, have a lovely glass. Yes, meet with the people you meet with, or have the same snacks, or make sure you have a lovely slice of lemon in your tonic or whatever. So do all of that ritual stuff, but just don't use the poison. Yeah. I mean, I'm down for that, because truly I love whiskey. I love picantes, which is a tequila cocktail, and I love Malbec. So I would happily drink all of those alcohol free, because also I know that I've done it because for years I was teetotal, and that just happened. It wasn't even a choice. I just stopped drinking. So yeah, okay, I'm going to try this. This is going to happen. Keep me posted. I will do. And everybody, please watch Sobriety Rocks, because honestly, I was howling through your whole TED talk. It was so funny, and the end, you have to watch to the end. That really made me spit out my tea. Well, it's only short. It's a short TED talk. It's brilliant. So, it's 11 minutes and 14 seconds. And there you go. So you got it. There we go. Yeah, and it's not a wasted 11 minutes and 14 seconds. Janey, where can everybody find you online, read your books, and listen to your podcast? Yeah, so the everything really is at thesoberclub.com. So there's blogs there, and the podcast can be found there. It's called Alcohol Free Life. So you can find that at thesoberclub.com, or you can get it on Apple Podcasts or whatever, Spotify, of course. But everything is at thesoberclub.com. And if you wanted to join as a member, there's a small monthly membership fee. But that includes the online course, Get the Buzz Without the Booze, and our community, and all our health and wellbeing stuff. And then the book will be wherever you buy your books. It's called Happy, Healthy, Sober. You can pre-order it on Amazon, I think, at the moment. Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me, Janey. It was amazing to have you, and I'm definitely going to let you know what I think of those drinks. Yeah, definitely. I look forward to seeing your progress. Enjoy. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Speak On. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share with your friends, family, co-workers, strangers in the street. To find out more about us, including our upcoming events, head over to Instagram, instagram.com/speakon_. Bye!